Hello, listeners. Lisa Starr back with another episode of StarCast. This week, we are kind of looking inward at the consulting industry instead of outward. And I am really pleased to be joined by a fellow consultant, Leah Crump. She is the founder of Leah Crump Consulting. She's a very visionary guide to opening wellness facilities all over the place, very well experienced, and she has some exciting news to share with us. So welcome, Leah. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Lisa.
So, Leah, you're based in San Antonio, correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about how your journey into being a consultant was. I'm sure it's similar to many of ours, but I like to hear the individual story. Like when you were a young woman starting off, did you want to be a spa consultant? My guess is probably that was not on the radar.
Right. I don't know that I knew what that was at the time.
I don't think it was a thing at the time. That's for why.
I did not know that was a thing. But yes, probably very similar to many of us. I started in the treatment room as a healer, made the classical transition into training and leadership development, into management, got the spa director role. And then the company that I ended up working for had some new openings coming up and tapped my shoulder to see if I'd be interested in assisting and consulting, which was even a new word at that time to me, and gave my first consulting project on a new opening at that time. I thought it was so fun. I thought it was so interesting, liked the idea of doing something new, building something new. And it was just a really good time to lean into all of the variety of vendor relationships and partnerships and friendships with many of us that are working in this thing called wellness together. And had such a great time that I continued to work with that group, and everything just kind of organically happened from there for me.
Well, that sounds so easy, but you sort of glossed over a point, I think, which is that you were a healer in the treatment room and then you went into management. I mean, that's a completely different skill set. How did you know what to do? How did you learn what those responsibilities were?
Yeah. Well, I was lucky, I think, to the property that I was working for was at the time a WTS International Managed Property, which is now AAG. I loved that spa. I loved my team. I loved my boss, the director, the assistant director, the supervisor. I even liked the GM and the marketing director, and it was the right breeding ground for me to have the structure and the support and simply the great relationships to even have the audacity to ask, hey, would you be interested in teaching me how to become a spa director? And my boss, her name is Jennifer. She's no longer in the industry, but she was amazing. And she said, absolutely, yes. I was lucky to get to spend an hour with her every single Wednesday for a year. And then just in a cute way, I learned much later that the spa supervisor training module that I did was written by Jennifer Whalen Smith way back in the day. So I got to become friends with her much later on and realized, I was being touched by angels all along the way.
Mostly named Jennifer, it sounds like.
Jennifer.
That's like. So good for you for sort of taking the bull by the horns, as it were, and asking for help, and wonderful that person guided you. I mean, we often talk amongst ourselves as consultants about how we will train the next group, that like many of us are getting older, and it's like, who are the young people coming up who are going to do this work? Because there's not really a school you can go to learn how to be a consultant, right?
That's so true. And actually, over the past 2 years or so, I noticed that lots of people that were interested in coming over to the consulting side, from whether that be a spa leadership role or on the vendor side, had a lot of the same similar questions. So actually last year, what I did was I created a Spa Consulting Mastermind course. I'm actually finishing up the first cohort with right now. And it's 12 modules, really 12 key areas that I found are generally important to know about, but the how and the why behind why we do what we do, but how to get going, how to not waste time fumbling and figuring out contracts, NDAs, methods of payment, how to not get, into sticky situations, how to maintain your network and your relationships. And I think that if there is a piece of advice I could give the up and coming people that are interested in consulting is, as Nike says, just do it. Really does matter. You just
Right.
have to do one thing and then do another thing and be focused and have a goal and a mission, and stick to that. But I think that part of why I've had a great time and gotten as far as I have so far, I still have a couple more decades in me, I think, is because I've been willing to take risks, big and small, and simply just do it.
It's interesting. It's a really good point and great to hear about your course because it's one thing to know how to run a spa or open a spa, which are two different things, right? But you learn how to equip it and how it works and what operationally should happen. And then you think you can be a consultant. But knowing how it works is different from being able to help other people, right? So let's talk a little bit about what those differences are.
I can think of a succinct example of, in general, problem solving, whether it's in a new build or, as we learned at iSpa this year, 30% of resorts will be renovating over the coming years. So that's similar to a new build, new opening, but there's actually a lot more complex nuance involved with that as well. I think that the difference between perhaps working at one place for a long time or working at a few places for a few years each is the variety and the diversity and the simply experience that we draw as being consultants. And again, you can't get there unless you just go for it and say yes to and go after contracts and projects. But the variety and diversity of what we see out in the field, where I'm sure, Lisa, you've got hundreds of projects under your belt, maybe even thousands of interesting conversations and problems that you've solved over the year. So I feel that one of the interesting and unique skill sets of a spa and wellness consultant, and in particular within the hotel and resort side of things, is that there are probably about 10 or so, 12 or so buckets of pieces to the puzzle. And in my head, when I'm approaching a project or a problem with a client, I'm thinking about, okay, how is this location similar to maybe, 5 or 10 other properties that I'm familiar with that I've worked with on this issue? And then what about, if there's something going on in their amenities or wet room area? I'm thinking about what's been similar to this in history over my experience that I can call upon and remember, okay, there was something specifically unique to the eucalyptus steam factor and behind the wall. And, you just are able to solve problems quickly, in that way. And then the other fun part is, I'm really proud of the relationships, especially on the vendor side. It's really satisfying, and I'm proud of being able to simply pick up the phone or a quick text or a quick email to get an answer about a faulty hydraulic massage table. And then we get to fix it when engineering has maybe been stumbling and fumbling on that for 2 years.
That's all really true. I mean, you do have to pull on a big reservoir of like, oh, I've done this. And that's the value to me of a company hiring a consultant is we've done it all before, probably multiple times. But I also think there's a piece, and I'd be interested in what you think about this, where when you're a guide, and I work mostly with owner operate locations, day spas, standalones, and I don't want to open the Lisa Star Spa all over the country, right? I mean, it has to be their vision, and I may know what I think will work or what I'd recommend, but it's their idea. And so it's like I feel like my job sometimes is sort of guiding them in a gentle way into a direction, but I can't say you must do this or that because it's their idea. So there's that part of it too that I think was an interesting learning curve for me as a consultant is being able to guide and also being able to stand back when I need to.
Yeah, that says a lot about you. And I think that it's so vital to meet our clients where they are. That could mean, look, we want a really low touch experience. Simply solve for low hanging fruit at this time. Tell us what's wrong. Tell us the easy fix. Tell us the middle of the road fixes, and tell us the CapEx fixes. Another example of meeting a client where they are is For example, I'm speaking with someone right now in group that they want to be led a little bit more heavily handed.
Mm.
Oh, I'm willing to do that because they're also saying, and we will meet you and do the work. And we want to learn and we want to get this thing going and do this big, beautiful, amazing thing. So I think it's important to guide, as you say, because completely agree. These aren't our spas. I mean, we could all do that if we wanted to, but then we would be an operator. And maybe it's not as fun or interesting to our types of entrepreneurial personalities.
Do you get asked that? I do. People say, "Don't you wanna have your own spa?" And I'm like, "No." I mean, I was the GM of a group of spas for many years, and I like being a consultant because the problems are the same and yet different. You know, like the similar things need to be solved, but they have a different wrapping. They're in a different part of the country. They have a different flavor, if you will, to them, and that keeps it fresh for me anyway. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's a personality, a DNA, and energetics thing. About 5 or 6 years ago, I discovered the human design element. I'm not sure if you've heard of that, but there are a couple of different buckets of personalities. And it's just a fun thing, kind of astrology or a little bit of our wellness woo woo type of things.
Mhm.
But there are manifestors and generators and a few others. I thought I was a manifester this whole time. I'm not. It turns out I am a generator. And without going too far down a rabbit hole here, I'm actually, based on the studying and reading that I've done about that and have since implemented, it turns out I'm much better when I'm leading from behind and collaborating. And truly, honestly, once I shifted that mindset for myself, where I was coming from a place for a really long time of, as I mentioned, I went out and sought guidance and mentorship to get into spa and wellness hotel leadership, kept pushing, going out, leading, not forcing exactly, but maybe fighting the opportunities in the universe in a way that was a little bit silly. Because as it turns out, once I softened and once I got more into that receiving and magnetic and collaborative mindset, things really started becoming a lot easier for me. And then I realized that actually is perfect for what I'm doing as a consultant because it's all collaboration. And yes, absolutely, there's innovation, futurism, and forward thinking, which I love that, and that's a huge part of my DNA. But I'm not as much doing it alone anymore, and that feels great.
So you had mentioned about a topic you were writing about with soft power and feminine leadership. Do you feel that being female is an advantage for a spa consultant? I'm thinking, I mean, most of the ones that I know are women. You know, we know some men in our field, but I think the women do outnumber them. I wonder if there's a reason for that, or if it's just because it's so female leading spas and they're moving into consulting. What's your thoughts on that, Leah?
I have a lot of thoughts on that. And I have a lot of thoughts on what happens when we don't stay soft or stay balanced with that. And really what that is, maybe we'll talk about later, which is the burnout factor. I think that soft power and the feminine energy, yes, absolutely. We are at least 80, 85% women within our field. But the interesting layer to that is for those of us that work on the hospitality and hotel side of things, is that there's a lot of guys in those executive roles and in the ownership leadership roles. So, one thing that I've always placed a great level of importance on, even from the treatment room days, when I mentioned I liked the GM, I liked the marketing manager at that property I was at, which was a Hilton. I learned early on, I just intuitively had the recognition that I need to be able to speak about data, speak about the science, speak about revenue, those hardline numbers, and almost like translating from English to Spanish or, just being able to,
So true.
you mentioned guide, but it's almost like being a translator. And I have found that I'm able to walk both sides of that line when I'm feeling balanced. And the best results that I've had are when I'm not forcing and when I'm staying in my feminine energy. I think that the balance going over to the masculine side is maybe those, the numbers, the data, the strategy, things like that. And it all has an equally important position to get us from A to B.
For sure. It's funny about the numbers. I'm thinking about a time I was called by another spa consultant who was working on a project. And people think that designing the spa or creating a spa is about like picking out the curtains and the furniture and, the decoration part. And she said to me, that they need help with the numbers. And, she said, I don't do that part. And I'm thinking, well, then what are you doing? Like that. I mean, without the numbers, we don't have a business, right? The financial numbers have to make sense, and we're expected to be able to forecast and provide that in many different aspects, as you said, but also true to feminine energy, right? Maybe with a little intuition mixed in. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a real artistry to blending all of these buckets of the business together. It's almost like whether you're a paint by numbers person or whether you're a free flow abstract person on an art night with your friends, you start with a blank canvas. And I think it's important to, again, know where you're going and have an understanding collectively and collaboratively of what is it that you want to build as for the client. And also, what do I know? What are all the things that I know that I can lean into that can help them get to the final product, which is a beautifully curated piece of art, and wellness is functional art that we get to hopefully live every single day. But in particular, on the spa side of things, our guests and clients get to come and have this living art and this beautiful infusion of well-being brought into their lives for one day or for maybe even a couple of days in a row. And there are many things, to your point, of getting everything organized and functional and consistently executed every day in and day out. And then to be able to change things as time goes on. I mean, every couple of years, there's a little bit of a pivot in the market on, well, what's important to owners and operators. And that's coming from, what do the clients want? What do the consumers care about? I think one thing that we know now more than ever is that consumers are highly educated and highly discerning, in particular in the luxury market.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you can't go online without seeing spas now. And so everyone thinks their spa should look like that one, whatever it was, better and better. The bar is being raised, which is good. We've all seen the swell in business since COVID, the demand for wellness services that consumers still have. But it also means that sometimes the vision and the reality don't always match up. What someone wants to create and what they can afford to create or their market will serve don't always match. So there's also some disappointments. I mean, how do you manage that with a client?
Hmm. Well, if I really if I really am honest and thinking deeply about what is the bottom line here with, okay, what is my true product as a spa owner? And it might not be, like you're saying, the pinnacle, the goal, the ultimate, the budget couldn't handle that. But what costs nothing is great service, and maybe it costs zero to nothing, great training. I think that the consistent level and delivery of that service and whatever all of the touch points are that, and I love doing this with clients, let's paint that picture. Let's create, 25, 50 specific points of service or guest experience, guest interaction that are layered through the experience. The tricky part is that you have to do it every time, over and over again. And the one thing that kind of kills me in luxury is that everything's luxury now. Luxury supplements, luxury fitness studio, luxury app on your phone. I mean, it's kind of silly. Of course, things can be beautiful and beauty is a part of a luxurious, nice experience, but it's how you make people feel. And I think that that's a huge opportunity. And we actually know this from the data when we were in Germany together recently, earlier this spring. the guest expectation is all the way up here.
Mm.
What they're actually getting is not meeting the expectation and the demand. So, what that tells me is that we have a huge opportunity, a huge market opportunity to get there. And in my opinion, professionally, you could change not one singular thing. Don't dive into spending money. Don't look at your CapEx. It's about going back to the teams, the people, and the power of the element of service. Showing people rather than telling people matter.
Do you think the difference between the expectation and the reality has been created by us promising too much from a spa visit in our marketing?
Such a great topic. So as you and I know, and it's exciting, wellness is the hot topic for hospitality and hotels these days. It's been really fun and kind of lucky, I think, for for people like us to just be here and everybody cares, you know. As we also know, hotels unfortunately tend to move pretty slow, especially if we're talking about from the top down corporate level and then trickling out and down to property. But there's an element of, I've mentioned marketing a couple of times. There's a reason for that because marketing is so important. It's telling the consumer, who are you? What are you about? And what am I going to get out of coming to see you? There's some disconnect still on the marketing side, whether that's corporate, whether that's a, singular solo owner in South Dakota doing Instagram for their wellness spa or med spa. Tell me who you are. Tell me what I can expect. Give me a feeling and within, as you're painting the picture of your brand world, be so specific that there is no sliver of a doubt that I understand what I'll be getting into. Some brands do it better than others, but we've left things a little bit. And again, we've all been figuring this out together for the past several years now, but we need to get it together. We need to get the marketing people together. We need to get the people that are sending those messages out and curating them to be a lot more specific, to be a lot more targeted, and be, tell me what the results are going to be from coming and experiencing your wellness center.
And be specific, right? Because I remember back in the day when we were doing day-long spa programs and we would tell the client, this is going to be the best day of your life. We would say that. And then you think, really? I mean, are we really going to deliver the best day of their life? Probably not. Can we deliver a great experience and make them feel relaxed? Yes. So I think we have to do what we have to say what we can actually do and achieve. And to your point, talk about results. We've gotten so much into the fluff and the jargon around what we do that your average client has no idea what we're talking about sometimes, I think. What is LED? What is cryotherapy? What's a hyperbaric chamber? And now there's all acronyms and people just want to know, am I going to feel better? And is it going to help me perform better in my daily life?
Mhm. That's so true. And I think it's really key to know who is your client. I mean, back from my early learning about business and marketing days, first thing I remember studying is who's your avatar? And that's pretty pre-specific compared to a larger spa servicing, a big city. But we know it's mostly women. We know it's a lot of massage. And we know the 4 or 5 main things that people and women care about, whether that's rest, recovery, longevity, or performance. We know what the outcome is that people want. And so I also agree with you. There's no need to use unnecessary language and jargon. Tell me, am I going to sleep better? Tell me how that's going to happen and tell me what you're going to do to get me there. It's not really that hard. It actually is pretty simple once you just get clear on who are you serving and how are you going to serve them. And I think just get rid of all the fluff and then show them.
So, Leah, would you say, I mean, you feel that your business is a healing business or creates a healing path through your work?
Oh, I definitely feel that way. I don't think you could ever shake the holistic health practitioner healer out of my bones. I still have my massage table up about once a month to treat my kids and my husband. And I think it's really important to stay connected to my personal why, which is to help as many people as I can, make a huge impact for as long as I can with positivity and well being. And even though I thought when I was in college I was going to be a broadcast journalist and in media, my whole world took a quick right hand turn when I moved cities, met some new friends, and ended up getting a scholarship at this amazing, wonderful beachside healing arts school. And it was so positively impactful in my life. Seriously, these were really the foundational kind of like original adult best friends. This was learning about yoga for the first time. This was learning about body reading and energy and ethical and empathic communication. I was in university for communication, but this was the next level.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm so grateful and will remain deeply rooted into healing and being well and doing well, as a collective, because we have to be well and feel well in order to make that impact. And I've learned that the hard way over a long period of time. And I've also done things the right way enough to see what really works for me as a professional woman.
Well, that's a great segue, Leah, into a topic that I want to bring up here, which is being well and doing well, as you said, and you want to impact as many people as you can. So you decided to write a book just, because. So your book is called Be Well and Do Well. Tell us a little bit about when it comes out and also what it's about.
Yeah. So the book is titled Be Well, Do Well. It's a field guide to doing work that heals, leadership that lasts, and finding success on your own terms. At a certain point last year, I was out on a project in California, and I was spending enough time there that made friends with this great woman who we would go do a workout and grab a healthy dinner, maybe a glass of wine. And eventually she just said to me, you should write these stories down. I really love listening to them. And she's so cool and honest and nice. I kind of believed her. And and then I kind of took that with me and thought about it with all of my, zero free time that I had. But it stuck with me in the back of my mind. And if I'm being honest, I've had this idea in my head, and I've picked up the pen and picked up my MacBook many times over a long period of time. And really what it was that I didn't feel ready or qualified at that time. And that sure was some imposter syndrome. That is a major theme that I know many people deal with, and myself included to this day. But I did get inspired enough to write this book, and it is complete now. It is really a love letter to our industry. Again, going back to all of the amazing and heartfelt conversations that I've had and listened to so many people, and in particular women, over such a long period of time. I mean, not only as a, master practitioner, but as a professional and simply as a colleague and a friend. We are all so similarly intertwined with what we've gone through, what we're dealing with. And, many of us have big goals and want to make that big positive impact. So how do we get there? I really weave personal storytelling through my early childhood up until now, kind of in what I would call early midlife, I guess. Some of the mistakes that I've made, doing things the long way, learning lessons the hard way. And for me personally, on a personal note, dealing with a lot of chronic pain and finding my way through that with grace. At the end of each chapter, there are some prompts, and I really try to bring the reader along with me, as in, this is not just about me, but I'm sharing my personal stories to relate to you, the reader. in the hope that some of these stories and lessons along the way will inspire you to also be well and do well. So my hope is that some of these lessons, inspirations, and questions that I ask directly of the reader will do just that, inspire people to lead the path of health, find work that heals, make those changes that so many people seem to be interested in. And most importantly, find a way into softness, balance, and walk away from burnout.
Sounds amazing. I can't wait to read it. And I'm awed that you found the time to just write a book. I mean, you mentioned you got this inspiration last year, so it hasn't been years in the making. I mean, how does one go about? I mean, I get the narrative part. I'm also a writer. I can write that down, but then someone has to edit it. And how do you market it? And how do you publish it? How did you navigate this journey?
I put it in my business plan for this year. I blabbed about it to people that would hold me accountable. Lisa Michaelis of Live Love Spa being one of, and I knew that, okay, this is a serious moment. And I am a serious person with foundation and structure around my business that can support that. So I work with someone who is a marketing expert and knows what to do and has gone through self-publishing a couple of times with a few of her other clients.
That's helpful.
So I'm not learning on my own. Some things we don't know everything. So there've been a few times where we're learning and figuring things out together, but that's fun. That's awesome. I do work closely with my Chat GPT Pro. So it's been so helpful with doing lots of things, almost everything, but a timeline. Tell me all the things that I haven't thought of as a self-published author. Tell me what's true. Things need to happen, right? Just all the A to Z. And I did that. And then another part of it, thank you very much, Lisa, is the media piece of it. If you build it, they will come doesn't actually work when you're trying to sell a idea or a product. So being able to have, of course, the clear vision, the thing is done, the book is done, but how do I talk about this? And how do I not have imposter syndrome at this point? And it's really a fun challenge for me to stand in my personal power. And I know that this book is not perfect. And I'm going to look back in a year and go, oh my God, I can't believe I thought that way or said that. Maybe, probably, I don't know. But then my friend that told me to write this book in the first place said, well, then you can write another one and it's going to be okay. But we turned this into a bit of a family affair. My youngest brother is he has the best vocabulary of anyone I've ever met. He is a English teacher. This is my editor. My 8-year-old daughter, who is a design student going into FIT, New York City, did beautiful illustrations for the book that were created by prompts that I gave her to infuse a sense visually of what you're about to get into with each chapter, page breaks, and just that, I mentioned art a couple of times because not only do I believe that art and beauty are nice and a lovely thing to have, but they're so important that I couldn't not bring that along for the reader's experience.
Amazing that you're able to involve everyone. That'll be even more fun. So when does it come out?
So pre-sales start June 15th of this summer, 2025. And then I strategically set the launch date for August 1st, the first day of National Wellness Month. Mm-hmm. So can visit leahcrump.com, go right to that book landing page, get on the early reader list or get on that pre-sale list.
Well, it's such a great project. I'm so impressed that you pulled it together. And you're right. You might look back and feel like you would change things. We all do. And it becomes, I find this with art in general. I had an artist friend that I was very close with for a while. She did oil paintings and I would watch her. She would never finish them. There was always, she'd go back a week later and she'd add a flower or something. And it's like that with writing, right? You can always go back and change a word or change something. And eventually you have to say, I can't let perfect be the enemy of good, right? It's fine. We're going with it. And as your friend said, you'll write it sequel later when your plans change or your outlook changes, you'll just write another one.
Yeah, and what a great lesson in life in general. And that's true, just as you mentioned with your friend who kept going back. I needed to turn this in at a certain point, and I did. I kept going back. I kept wanting to give more. And you know how we were talking about what is the result that you're trying to give your client? How do you want them to feel? What is the outcome of this experience? And I'm so clear on what that is. I kept trying to add more elements to make it a more enriched experience, kind of the difference between setting a table for, just yourself versus hosting, just the most beautiful, relaxed dinner party with your closest girlfriends. You keep adding one more candle. You keep adding, one more beautiful element of rose petals. So it was so important to me to add as many gifts and layers as I could. And I think just as we do in our work, whatever that is, I know not every single person listening to this is a spa consultant, but we all are doing stuff in our lives. And the lesson that I've learned through this hard thing that I did and that I got to complete and that now is going to happen and become shared with my community is that eventually you have to let go and move on. And I think that's true with the work that we do, with the relationships that we have, with the boundaries and the balance. And I think that the elements of all of those things, good enough is good enough. And hopefully it was excellent.
Well, I'm sure it will be. You mentioned healing burnout, and that is something that is a note that I guess is a topic in the book, healing burnout in the consulting and wellness space. How do you approach that? I mean, how do you think we get the burnout, and then how do we deal with it?
I think we can all picture a crazy day or a crazy work week, if you will. And just speaking maybe on the professional side of things, although work-life balance is certainly important, it's just that we spend so many hours, most of our hours consumed in our work life for those of us in the professional fields. With that said, some of the studies and auditing I've done recently, just for example, I mentioned the Spa Consulting Mastermind. One of the modules is, and the prompt within it is time management and performing a time audit. So this group came back and said, and everyone agreed, okay, I'm spending all of my time on emails, meetings, and running around in my operation, equal parts kind of garbage. That's kind of garbagey. And none of us like that. So how can we take control? And again, this is such a huge and nuanced topic. And all three of those things are important, but we're in charge of our own professional destiny in a way. And we're in charge with where our time is going and where our energy is going. The phrase, I don't have time for XYZ is a little bit like I'm not prioritizing XYZ. If we really go kind of deep into our nervous system, I have so many friends, and I'm sure you do too, that, wake up early to get their workouts in, that meal prep, that have practiced good sleep hygiene. I mean, there's so many things that you and I and others are involved with as far as all the layers of wellness and lifestyle and beauty. But there's a little bit of a sense of realism and a little bit of a sense of choice with how am I really prioritizing my time over a long period of time. And that can even be focusing on today or looking ahead at your week. Or for me, I mentioned my business plan for this year included getting this book done and other things as well, very specific pieces to my plan that I know must be prioritized, or they will simply continue to be pipeline dreams that may never happen because I will never make time for them. So if we dial that back and think about an operator, for example, that can be a solo spa owner, that can be a 5-star 30-room spa director in a destination location. The time, we all have the same. And the burnout happens when the time gets out of control. And I know this isn't rocket science, but it seems like it's harder and harder as the world and time keeps going faster and faster. So I urge the people in my life, and I urge the younger generation of leaders that are coming up and coming through, and it's so fun to see them begin to have influence and absorb what we're telling them is important. And I would die before I told them it's important for you to put everything else and everyone first before yourself. That's not the answer. It's softness, it's nuance, it's self-care, and it's do what you can for yourself. I personally do not get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go work out. That doesn't work for my circadian rhythm or my DNA. I prefer to work out at other times in the day. For me, sleep isn't number one priority. That is, I can't function without good sleep.
Mhm.
And nutrition is another huge one. So we have these building blocks of simply being a human being. And us in wellness know probably more than most other people important those things are. And so it's about making the time and making those choices that are non-negotiable, that can pivot and be flexible, but consistently over long periods of time. And I think that many of us will go through hard things and hard times in life, which seasonings to the recipe as we go through the finish line. So I urge people to not get hardened by that, pigeonhole yourself into a certain way of thinking, but to stay open and stay flexible to move through burnout rather than to get stuck in it.
Well, you're so right about what we know. I mean, we sit in many lectures with people who talk about how do you achieve wellness, and it's all the building blocks you spoke on: nutrition, sleep, body movement, etc. Paying attention to what you need personally, and then making that choice. And it is a choice, right? And same for work. Like we choose to do the things we do. So it's good when you on that path to balance to learn when you can choose not to do something and not feel guilty about it. That's the challenge, I think, always. You also mentioned in your book marketing materials the truth about the wellness industry that no one's talking about. So I was intrigued. What is that?
Yes. Well, we actually touched a little bit on this. And one of the things I think about when I think about the truth of the matter is the messiness and like we were saying, not waking up early or having a hard thing that happens or prioritizing yourself first. So, what is the truth behind the wellness industry is that unfortunately, and we've heard this so many times at conferences, conventions, lectures, is that us that are leading wellness are not taking care of ourselves. And this breaks my heart. And this was a catalyst for writing this book to try to inspire others to move through that in a way that suits you best, and sustainably so. It breaks my heart that we are not taking care of ourselves. I think we are taking care of each other. And in general, I think this industry supports one another and are very uplifting and supportive in that way. But there has been a shift with how quickly and how fast time has been moving forward, and things keep happening faster and faster. And
Amazing how that's true. It's like,
it things change fast, and then we have to pivot. And of course, there's the pressure of performance, and revenue, of course, is top of mind. But how are we doing that? And one way that I think we do that, if we go back to the who is your avatar, who is your ultimate, perfect A+ guest that you're serving, we know a lot about that person if you've studied marketing. We know what they look like, where they shop, what they eat. We know them as well as we know ourselves. But my question to the listeners and people watching this right now, if you're thinking about, what are some of the, untouched secrets in the wellness world? I think it's how do we present ourselves? How am I telling you I want to be treated? How am I telling you how much time I have for emails, operations, and meetings? Because you know what, Lisa, I have very little time for that in 2025. And if it can be a email or better yet, if it can be an email that my team can handle, I personally am prioritizing. I no longer have time for quick phone conversations, or because they're not quick, things turn into 45 minutes when it was, said to be a 10 or 15-minute call. And I don't have the patience or the time for that, because I'm in charge of that, and I won't be letting that get out of hand anymore. And I think that that's one of the unfortunate secrets of the wellness world and the hospitality world, is we've all let this fast moving, forward looking culture in hospitality especially get too out of control. It's like a snowball that becomes an avalanche, and everyone now, in my professional opinion, as I am seriously viewing this all over the country in North America, what I see and in my field notes in this field guide is that we have all just gotten, to become a part of this big snowball going to nowhere. It's too out of control. So what my urge is to people is to think about, where am I going and who am I? And am I really telling people who I am by my actions, by my presence, and by the choices that I'm making? Because we have a responsibility in the wellness field to show the consumers and to show our guests who we are, what we care about, and how we can help you. If they see us looking frazzled, upset, unhealthy, unfocused, that's not really a very good indicator of the result that you will receive by participating in wellness. So not only is this is a soft invitation to take good care, because longevity is important and burnout is real, but also to set a good example for not only our customers, clients, consumers, but our families, loved ones, friends, and colleagues.
Oh, many, many valuable words of wisdom, Leah, in this book. Be well, do well. You can sign up at leahcrump.com. That's leahcrump.com to be a pre-reader. I thank you for joining us. And before we conclude, I'd like one last question about back to the consulting world. What are you seeing in projects like on the horizon? Like, we're moving from facials and massages into more interesting realms of wellness. What are some of the interesting developments you expect to see in the next 3 to 5 years out in the field?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you two. The first one, I think, has become a bit of a popular topic. The way that I phrase this is balancing technology with tradition. So you mentioned red light, LED, the list goes on with all of the amazing ways that technology can assist longevity, your lifestyle, your recovery, your sleep. All of those are entirely valid, really exciting and fun, and I'm all for it. And I think that there is a place. I think that the market told us since COVID and really like during COVID, with the staffing issue, with the touchless issue, again, the market met the demand. Now we want community. We want community back. But I think that the technology will never go away. And how wonderful to be able to
Marry those two. Yeah.
to utilize services that are outside of spa operating hours, where you don't even necessarily have to go inside of the spa to receive a robotic massage or a cryotherapy session, for example. And then technology needs to happen so that people can access that with their guest card or with their, digital wrist card, if you will, to access, enter, utilize the service, touchless, and then leave. And at the same time, people are more important now than ever. We have all of these ultimately very talented, very gifted providers, whether that's massage, facials, bodies, mental health, medical spa side of things. There's no way you can get a result without a human contact and interaction for so many things. And I think what we will see, and something that I'm all for navigating the how to and the execution and then the consistency factor, is marrying and walking the balanced line between those two things. And that's maybe a little bit on programming and planning and mapping. And I love that kind of approach. So I think that people should continue to be excited about technology, but it's dangerous, actually. And I'm a very big fan of AI and all of that, but things can become a little dangerous if we continue down that path, a little bit like that snowball becoming an avalanche. We need to be mindful, we need to be nuanced, and we need to remember to not lose the human touch. The second thing that I will mention quickly to keep an eye out for, I mentioned a little bit about community. I've mentioned women a lot on this call as well. I think that community will continue to expand and become important. I'm having a lot of interesting conversations with very smart women that are interested in bringing the third place concept to the forefront. Yes. And so that not only can mean your wellness and fitness experiences, but community aspect. Perhaps there is a game room. Perhaps there is financial advising planning. Perhaps there is a library aspect to it. And perhaps there is an element of going to the third place, not just for I'm thinking about maybe a trivia night or to go coffee and meet a friend, but to actually get more out of all of the things that we as human beings and women and ladies maybe haven't thought about or touched on for a while. I mentioned paint by numbers or painting with a friend. I had that in my mind because my daughter, the artist, went and did a little paint night with her friends the other night. And I haven't done that in so long. Haven't even thought about it. So let's bring back some of those creative and community elements into a third space that has a lot to do with wellness and enough to do with community.
Sounds like a great recipe to me. I mean, we could all use a little more fun in our lives, right? Thanks again for joining us, Leah Crump. It's been a great conversation, and we look forward to your book and more of your good works out in the world. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Lisa.